Hi, I'm Tal Yaniv. I'm an Israeli electronic musician working under the stage name Croptal. In this video, I would like to review my latest album, Variations, track by track. One night in April 2022, a few weeks after releasing my first album, I remember myself driving and listening to some music on Spotify. I specifically searched for folk songs sang by Maddie Pryor. Maddie Pryor is an acclaimed British folk singer, and I was quite familiar with her early work from the 1970s. She was and still is the lead vocalist of Still I Span, a British folk music band. Maddie also collaborated with many artists during her long career. While browsing through her discography, at one point, Spotify suggested a song that sounded familiar. I knew other versions of that song, but this one was quite new to me. This song was The Blacksmith. The version I heard for the very first time that night was an a cappella performance of this song, just Maddie's mesmerizing vocals with no band behind.
He wrote me a letter with his hammer.
It ended with an applause, so I figured out it was a live performance, which it actually was. I played it back over and over, and while playing, I imagined a new arrangement backing Maddie's solo singing. When I got back home, I sat at my studio, downloaded the track, and put down into the computer the composition and the arrangement ideas that I had in mind. I sent the result to Maddie's record company for receiving some feedback and maybe a consent to proceed with the project, and they gave me the go. They also added that Maddie would love to hear some real strings in the arrangement. This was a great feedback, so I wrote a score for strings for this arrangement, and while drawing the notes on the clef, new melodies and tunes came to me. I sat at the piano and played those notes, and all of a sudden, the whole concept of the album just popped to me. The result was an album with 9 tracks. It begins with this piano theme you now hear in the background and follows with 8 variations. Each variation references the previous tracks all the way to this piano theme. Let's hear a few notes. Since I was already engaged with the string arrangement for the Blacksmith, I took it a step further and wrote the first variation to a string orchestra. Both the piano theme and the strings variation begin with arpeggios, notes of a chord played individually instead of playing the whole chord at once. The strings play a melody that somewhat resembles the piano theme. And at one point, the strings play the piano passage. After completing the scores for the piano theme, the first variation, and the strings arrangement for the Blacksmith, I traveled all the way to Budapest to conduct an orchestra and record both the piano and the strings. With the recorded tracks, I went back to my studio and started improvising over the samples. I prepared a few samples and recorded some tracks. Then, in real time, I constructed and deconstructed them, which resulted with the second variation, which is called Synths and Samples. Now it was time for me to do something lighter. I took the rhythmic part of the strings variation played it on a piano very rhythmically, took the melody and handed it to a British soprano singer, Caroline Joy, who recorded at home the melody and sent it back to me. The combination of the rhythmic piano, Caroline's voice, and drum loops yielded the third variation. It is called Piano Track 3. This results in a lighter, rhythmic and somewhat dance floor beat. In case you wondered, my first album has tracks named Piano Track 1 and 2. Back to electronics and experiments, I took again samples from the string recording and manipulated them so they sounded like very short notes. Here and there I led those notes to continue and reveal their origin, which results in the fourth variation, electronic. At the very end, I used the string recording for the Blacksmith. Now comes the fifth variation, which is a global musical collaboration. It started in my mind as an arrangement for Woodwinds, acoustic bass and synthesizers. I invited a dear friend of mine, Nadav Haber, to play the clarinet part. I invited two other musicians to record the parts remotely. Miguel Vargas from Venezuela on flute, and Nikita Astrahanchev from Ukraine on double bass. The combination of electronic and acoustic instruments playing rhythmic, repetitive parts gives this track its unique atmosphere. This mellow piano line is actually taken from the first strings variation. Let's skip the sixth variation for a moment and go to the seventh one, the Blacksmith. Now I had a full arrangement with live strings and still something didn't fit quite right. A friend who heard it suggested adding live percussion, and damn, he was right. I booked a session with a taiko drummer. Taiko is a large Japanese drum known for its large, dramatic and cinematic sound. Georgi Halmschlager, a Hungarian percussionist, recorded the taiko part for the Blacksmith, which was just the missing link in the arrangement.
Yes, we could stop. We could have stopped way before. We could stop at 2:19. It's okay because I'm fading it out anyway.
This taiko track was the inspiration for the sixth variation. The drama is built from repetitive bass synthesizer sound, and the taikos emerge from the background in a gradual crescendo, followed by the piano theme melody. Here is the piano theme. And here is its reflection in the sixth variation. This variation became the prologue for the Blacksmith, so I called it the Smithy. I could actually imagine melting pots and hammers hitting down on anvils in an intolerable heat. So here we steer back to the seventh variation, the Blacksmith, with Maddie Pryor's outstanding vocal performance, taikos, strings and live bass played by my friend Sharon Holtzman. This song also resulted with a beautiful video, in which my sister Hilla plays the abandoned blacksmith lover.
Oh, a blacksmith courted me 9 months and better. He fairly won my heart. He wrote me a letter with his hammer in his hand. He looks clever, and if I were with my love, I would live forever.
And finally, the finale, the eighth and last variation. Here I did a complex sound manipulation. First, I took some samples from the strings arrangement and stretched them using a computer software like this. Then I used the stretched sound, recorded it on an analog tape recorder, and played it back in a lower speed, which also lowered the pitch. The result was very dramatic and ambient, I did the same with the piano arpeggios and other tracks. The combination of manipulated sounds with synthesizers created this cinematic, epic finale for my album. In the very last minute, I played a solo part on a synthesizer sound that sounds like a flute. This is my tribute to the late Lyle Mays, one of my all-time favorite jazz pianists. Lyle was an amazing keyboard player. He collaborated mostly with Pat Metheny and used a very similar flute sound in many of his recordings. The very last part of that track is a field recording from Budapest Keleti train station. In the next video, I would like to talk about the album's distribution to playlists and media outlets. Stay tuned!